Stanford University.
Okay, now if I can get Will and Greg and Eric up here, and Will's going to make a quick announcement to start off, and we'll sit in comfy chairs. And none of us have slides, so I'm going to leave this here.
People here are undergraduates. Just stretch out a little bit so we can see. How many undergraduates? Not that many. How many graduate students?
Yeah, move over.
More. How many young career, early career people heading into the food? Put them up. This is your opportunity to get recruited. So last year, Christopher put an emphasis on jobs in the food system and asked me to sort of report back. I was up on stage and I had mentioned 3 projects that were just in a very nascent stage. One was about food at work, which was an initiative to explore the opportunity for creating healthier and more sustainable meals in the workforce. Another was to focus on food and aging and social nourishment. And a third was to explore the unmet needs around food business education. And I'm really happy to say that out of that, those 3 sort of seeds of ideas, we actually generated fantastic projects many with Stanford students and people who were actually at the event last year. So, who's taken a strategy class? Well, you took one today by coming here. and I think that we really owe Christopher a big round of applause.
Oh, thank you.
Because he's really, he's really modeling and demonstrating in an amazing way what cross-disciplinary collaboration looks like. And for me, who's been kind of an entrepreneur for a long time, my experience is that real innovations and real sort of disruptive ideas come out of the convergence or just the slamming together of disparate perspectives. So. Once again, you've done a wonderful job. So
here, let's switch because you're the moderator. I want you
okay.
to be looking at the 3 of us.
So we're going to talk about we're going to talk about. Greg mentioned that Stanford and the Culinary Institute of America have been collaborating. Eric's been involved with a lot of things with the CIA and building a bridge with Stanford. And now, Christopher, you're bringing this whole. You've actually unified. I understand the Stanford campus in a way that it's never seen this kind of. Shared focus. So what's up with this next step? What are you guys cooking up?
Who wants to start? I guess I'd like to start and then pass it to either one of you quickly. One of our visions on campus is to actually focus, one of my visions, and it's shared by a lot of people, on 3 pillars: universities, hospitals, and work sites, as all groups that procure food and have challenges with that, prepare food to feed a captive audience, whether it's students or staff or patients, and then some customer nudging. So we really need Joel and his group to help us with that customer nudging. Eric and I had been talking about a summer program to targeting food service executive folks from universities. Right. And then Greg had the same idea about getting universities involved. And I think we're going to start with universities, because what an amazing group of young adults that haven't had their kids yet, most of them, and they're about to go make decisions, go have jobs, mold those choices forever. Eric's already calculated how many million meals
200 million.
Stanford students are going to have after they graduate. Yeah. So we've been thinking about universities and a collaborative research group of universities that would do this, and Eric and I are talking about a summer executive program, and Greg is already ahead of the game. So he's got 17 universities showing up at Greystone in 2 weeks from now to discuss this research collaborative. You want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at what has been created here at Stanford with Christopher's leadership and the ways in which you're having these cross-campus, cross-disciplinary conversations. This needs to happen everywhere. The other thing that strikes me is that there are so many interesting and important things going on at various campuses across the country. A lot of them are not connected. So it's the opportunity to look for an accelerator in all this. So how do we bring, create a community, invitational, sort of a curated community, if you will, of universities that want to work on some of these issues? But at the core of that is to connect, at least in my mind, because I'm in the culinary world, better connect the culinary food service world in universities with the academic world, which seems like it would be a natural because everyone's under the same roof, and it often doesn't happen. You know, the chefs that are running dining facilities don't really feel it's their place to talk to, you know, or they don't know people, and you know, you have people that are publishing broadly about changing food behaviors around the world, but they don't really know the food service people on their own campus. I think we can fix that. And that's sort of, I think, the genesis of the idea.
Yeah, and if you think about it, so the calculation, I have to give actually Matt Roth credit for that. And Matt worked with us some time ago as our Sustainable Food Program Manager. But he calculated the number of meals that the current meal plan students would consume over their lifetime, which is 200 million meals. And you know, the first time I heard that, I was so impacted by it. Because you're also talking about students who are going to be future leaders as well. So they have the ability to influence beyond just their own meals that they consume. And so if you think about some of the work that we have partnered with, I think collectively also on Google, you know, those are two Stanford alumni as well. And the food program is very important to what they do. So they impact beyond just their own meals that they consume. So in Stanford, we're producing 12,000 meals a day, a couple million meals a year. You make that exponential across all of universities, and that's a very powerful number to really think about being able to influence the industry on something that we feel collectively is very important. I would also say that we have a unique relationship with Christopher Rockstar Gardner here, and where we work closely with faculty. And that's an important component, I think, that is for us able to achieve a much greater results in the dining program.
So if I go to the summer program, what's going to happen? What am I going to learn? How is it going to change my campus experience?
So we started out thinking that there's a lot of things you can show. So let me tout Eric's horn right now, and Shirley Everett's in the audience somewhere, and her leadership is part of this. Stanford is revered across the nation for some of the really progressive work that they're doing, as I understand it from my little academic part of the world. And as Greg put out his request for universities, it just took a little call from Eric to say to show up, and these 17 leading universities are showing up. So at first it was like, let's show them the dining halls and let's show them some other stuff. And Eric said, you know, they're not going to just show up to see that. They want to come to Stanford and hear this. So we're looking for content. So we're looking for Christopher to give a health talk, for Sarah Soul to give a business talk, for Rob Reich to give an ethics talk, to Patrick Archie to give a farming talk. I mean, all these food-oriented people could complement all the tours they could take around campus to see his new dining halls, the new choice architecture that he's got, and things like that. And bringing Greg in for all the culinary, unapologetic deliciousness would feed right into that.
Or you could just take everybody up to Napa for the afternoon.
Okay.
Well, fortunately, we're all close here, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so you're underway with this. So this is just really an example of the kind of hotbed that this place is for ideas turning into action. It's really exciting.
We hope so, and overlaps with some of your ideas if you want to bring up some of yours.
We started to listen carefully, you know, over the last couple years about the passionate intent of recent graduates about wanting to go into the food industry. And then there's, you know, as you know, in the Valley here, in the Bay Area, there's a lot of zeal for applying kind of the tools of the trade, the lean startup methodology, if you will, to the food sector. And it's attracting a lot of people who have been successful or serial with an S entrepreneurs who now want to be serial with a C entrepreneurs. And, you know, it made me kind of perk up and pay attention. I've had the good fortune of teaching for many years. I'm co-teaching a class right now at Berkeley in the MBA program called Social Lean Launchpad, and we're working with teams of students to conceive and explore and discover and design and launch new companies, new enterprises, social ventures that have an aspiration of generating both financial return and social or environmental or both impact. And we're doing that in 16 weeks, and it's pretty remarkable. And we had we had way more people apply for the class than could get in, and we attracted students from all across the Berkeley campus. That was really interesting. So that combined with a lot of conversations with the Culinary Institute of America, Greg's group, this Menus of Change activity, where we're talking to professional leaders about how they're going to bring about and operationalize sort of new values around health and sustainability in their businesses. It's all easier said than done. And while there's lots of sort of one-day events and there's workshops and there's startup weekends and hackathons, there's no real dedicated program right now to the world of food innovation and entrepreneurship. That's all I can say.
So that sounds really powerful. And along that innovation, it just occurred to me, this is a shameless mistake. Deborah and Matt, I meant to include you. So when they all come for that summer program, we desperately need design. So you would be key players in that whole summer program. Sorry, I'm a little sleep deprived. Where should we go from here? So I want to talk a little bit more about the November 7th thing. What are we going to do?
Before we get, let me throw out one other thing. You know, how many people in the room are engaged in some way or other in research? Okay. So, you know, the starting point is, what's your question, right? What are you looking at? What are you studying? How are you thinking about it? I'll just tell a little story here that to my mind, sort of sets up why this is valuable. In the last few years, there have been 2 Institute of Medicine sodium committees. The last one was a little muddled when it came out because it was around the, you know, what should the lowest endpoint be. So we'll just set that group aside. The one before that was on national strategies for sodium reduction, and I was a member of that committee. I was the only sort of representative of culinary food service in that committee, and there were 13 of us. We met over the course of 2 years in DC, and everybody else was embedded in an academic community in some way. And the conversation was almost entirely on the first day about sodium substitutes, technological fixes, public policy, everything but culinary, and no mention of food service. Right. And there were a lot of references to research that was going on in CPG companies, but very much task focused. You know, I'm manufacturing soups, how do I get the sodium down in my soup and so forth. But there was no discussion about flavor, and I made the point, it's like, and you know, I said, has anyone done a literature review in terms of the relationship between sodium and driving flavor and that whole sort of ecosystem of questions? I said, what do you mean? And I said, well, take an example. At the end of the day, sodium is really not about saltiness in food, it's about driving flavor. And the example I gave, I'll go back to, we've been talking about mushrooms all morning, I'll go back to this. I said, okay, so imagine you're at home and you want to cook some mushrooms, and you have a saute pan, you have a skillet or something, and you stuff it full of mushrooms, and you put it on medium heat, and you try to cook that, all right? And you're going to get one result. Another result is you take a much larger pan, turn it on high heat, and put in half the mushrooms. The second pan, you're going to more effectively sear the mushrooms, you're going to develop more flavor, and you're going to need less sodium. Because you're not simply steaming the mushrooms, you're getting that kind of sear. And somebody said, that's why my mushrooms don't taste like they do in a restaurant, right? So, but the point of the exercise was to say, we got to get beyond the discussion about sodium and get to the issue of flavor. And you know, it's like nobody around the table had even thought about that. It's like, how can we be here at the Institute of Medicine working on a report on sodium reduction, national strategies, and no one has been, it's because no one has brought this up as a topic to research. So I think chefs who know a lot of these kinds of things, you know, culinarians, the food service community, we know some of these kinds of things. We're not necessarily doing the research, but we need to be at the table in terms of setting the agenda, because getting back to this earlier point in terms of deliciousness, it's not just what we do, but it's how we do it. What are the strategies? And so it's how do we get a more robust conversation between academics, between university food service, because, by the way, we have these incredible labs on every university campus where you can do all this great research.
So next week you're going to kick this off at the CIA?
Right, correct. Right, and we're inviting the business and culinary leadership of 18, 20 of the top universities.
And so the interesting thing about university, I think from a food service perspective, is we don't compete against each other. So whether it's Cal Berkeley, who's going to be there, or Notre Dame, or a number of other universities, actually across the nation, it was important to have a cross-representation. It's about sharing of ideas and bringing the research around what we do and what we're thinking about doing that is really critical for us to make decisions for not just for today, but really for the future.
I think you're actually competing against each other, because I know a lot of people make a decision about what school to go to because of the food quality.
Well, we know Stanford is difficult to get into anyway.
And I want to say for the researchers out there who have a hard time getting funding and a hard time recruiting, oh my God, we have this captive audience of students, and Stanford students love to experiment on themselves. So we've got funding, we've got students, we've got participants, we've got papers. Hey researchers, let's team up with these guys and write some papers.
Yeah, and sometimes the information is so good. So I've seen Christopher's protein presentation before, and guess who became a vegetarian this summer? Right? So I think it's about how you lead by change as well. Exactly.
I'm not a proselytizer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right.
All right, ladies, thank you very much. We have one more panel to go, and then Shirley. Thanks, guys.
For more, please visit us at stanford.edu.